Good morning, church family. I'm glad that you're with us this morning virtually. I hope you're doing well this morning, and I'm grateful that you're just joining in to worship and to get into God's Word today. Let's just center our hearts in His presence this morning. I invite the Lord to be in your home. He is here, He is present, He is working, He is good. So let's sing together. You are good. You are good. You are good when there's nothing good in me. You are love on display for all to see. You are light when the darkness closes in. You are hope. You are hope. You have covered all my sin. He is peace. And you are peace, when my fear is crippling. You are true, even in my wandering. You are joy, you're the reason that I sing. And you are life, in you death has lost its sting. And oh, I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world forever reigns. Sing, you are more, and you are more. You are more than my words will ever say. You are Lord. All creation will proclaim that you are here. In your presence I'm made whole. And you are God. Of all else I'm letting go. We're running. And oh, I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world forever reign. Sing it out. My heart will sing. No other name. Jesus, my heart will sing. No other name. Jesus, my heart will sing. No other name. Jesus, my heart will sing. No other name. Jesus. And oh, I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world forever reign. I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world forever reign. Lord, we come to you. Lord, we need to be in your arms right now. We thank you that you're holding the world in your hands. As we sang as little kids, you have the whole world in your hands, and you know every heart, every mind, every pain. because you've created us beautifully and wonderfully in your hands. Lord, there's not a thing on this earth that you don't know about. And we know you are good in the midst of it. We know that you are the light in the darkness, that you are the hope in our souls. God, I pray that we feel that embrace this morning. Nothing compares to that. Nothing compares to being in your presence. Lord, wherever we go, I pray that we take that with us. That we shine that light into our neighborhoods and into our city and into this country. In whatever way that we can right now. Lord, may we go in your name. May we stand in your name. May we stand up in your name. Jesus, be here. Be leading us. We look to you first. God, just be the peace that passes all understanding as we move and as we rest. As we go in and out, you are with us. We're going to sing this song this morning that a lot of you probably know. And these words just ring so true right now. Your light, Jesus, will shine when all else fails. And that brings me hope, that brings me joy, and I hope that encourages you this morning. But the verses say, we fail, and there's mercy for us. We stumble, and His grace catches us. I hope that encourages you this morning. His glory goes beyond all fame. No matter who knows us, His glory is what shines. And I hope that encourages you. God, your will above all else. We lose ourselves to gain you, God. May this be glorifying to you as we sing together. 1,000 times I've failed, still your mercy remains. Stumble again, still I'm caught in your grace everlasting. Your light will shine when all else fades, never ending. Your glory goes beyond all fame. We praise you, Lord Jesus. Your will above all else, and my purpose remains. The art of losing myself in bringing you praise everlasting. Your light will shine when all else fades, never ending. Your glory goes beyond all fame. In my heart and my soul, Lord, I give you control. Consume me from the inside out, Lord. Let justice and praise become my embrace, to love you from the inside out. and praise become my embrace to love you from the inside out. And turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Jesus, in the light of your glory and grace, turn our eyes upon you, Jesus. Turn our eyes upon you. Lord, we need you. Jesus, may that be our prayer. May that be our heart song. That we turn our eyes upon you. And not that the things of this world don't matter, but in perspective, we look to you. And we hold the things in this world with an open hand toward you, God, to move us, to act through us. May we be your light. May we bring that glory and grace to this world as we look to you. And know that our hearts, our souls are secure in eternity with you, no matter what happens on this earth. For we have put our faith and believed in our hearts that you are God. And if you don't have that security, that assurance that your life is held perfectly secure in the hands of a loving Father, I pray that you seek him today. Seek his truth today, and I pray that something touches your heart. God, we thank you for this time to be in your presence, to praise you, for you are worthy. Be with us. In your Son's holy, holy name. Amen.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to New Life Lincoln Park. We're so glad that you're with us this morning. Whether this is your first time or you've been coming here for a long time, we're just so grateful that we can gather in this way. And I know a lot of you have even been thinking, this has been great, this has worked, but when can we come back? And that is going to be happening soon, some point this summer. And so we're working through the different details as far as what it looks like to transition back to on-site meeting and regathering. And so we'll be looking for that in the next couple of weeks. But for now, we are really grateful that we are able to do this and that we can have church, not in the building, but church together. And so we're super grateful that you're here. If this is your first time with us, I'm just so glad that you've chosen to join us this morning from the comfort of your couch. And I would love to be able to thank you for that. You'll see a number down here in the corner. If you wouldn't mind just texting that and letting us know just your name. We'll send you information about just connecting with us. You also see a link that says connection card on that. If you want to click that, fill out that information there. It's really brief stuff. And really what that is for is so I can just thank you for joining us this morning and to even ask how to be praying for you. But we are glad that you're here. One of the things that we do on these Sunday mornings, even though we're not gathering locally, one of the things that we've always done is we want to take time to be able to connect. And so in that comment section, if you're on the church website, you might not be able to see some of these comments, but if you're on the Facebook feed, in that comment section, say hello to one another, say good morning. But we've been doing a quarantine question of the week. And today's quarantine question is, what actor or actress would you want to play you in a biopic about your life? And so the disease doctor quote a couple of months ago said that if there was going to make a movie of this year, he'd want Brad Pitt to play him. And so if they were going to make a biopic of you in your life and everything that you've been going through, who would play you? And so we thought that would be kind of a fun question to ask. And so go ahead and put that in the comments. While you're doing that, really only have one announcement for you this morning, and it's this, is that tonight at 8 o'clock, we are going to be doing a special time of prayer. It's a night of prayer for justice, peace, and reconciliation. We just think about all that's been going on in our country these last 2 weeks since the murder of George Floyd, when we think of everything that's led up to that point, not just that moment, not just these last 2 weeks, but the years that have led up to that moment. We want to have a time of reflection, confession, a time of sharing, and a time of prayer as a church family, and whoever would want to join us. The big thing about that is that we're going to be meeting over Zoom, and so we're not just going to be putting that information out there. And so you need to let us know that you're going to be joining us so that we can send you the Zoom information. The way that you can do that is go to the Facebook page. You can reserve a spot right there. If you want to reply to any of the church emails that you've received and say, I need the information about Zoom, or text this number and just say, please send me the Zoom information about the prayer meeting, and we'll get that to you. We're going to be sending that information out a couple hours before the actual meeting, so the meeting's at 8, probably around 5 or 6. But please make sure that you reserve a spot, because we won't be posting the Zoom information online. And so that's the big thing. We're going to be going into our message for this morning. And so I know that I helped shared some memes last week, and we're going to share some today. I know that I don't want to have any criticism about not having these. And so a couple for you. And really the idea of processing 2020, it's been a difficult process. It's been a challenging year. And so a lot of the memes have to do with that idea. Here's the first one. Congratulations, you have successfully made it to the end of May. Welcome to Jumanji Level 6, hurricane season. And so that's a real thing. 2020 every second, but wait, there's more. It definitely feels that way. If 2020 was a drink, what would it be? Colonoscopy prep. Sorry, I thought that was really funny. All right, next one. Can someone pull 2020 out of a Nintendo and blow on the cartridge? It ain't playing right. Some of you might not understand that, but it's very accurate. And then 2020, written by Stephen King, directed by Quentin Tarantino. Definitely feels that way. But then another one is just the reality of I miss people. And you have to be a Star Wars fan to understand why that's hilarious. But it is true. We definitely miss all of you and miss being here. And I'm looking forward to knowing that we're not alone as we go through this. And just really grateful for our church to be able to process this and to be together and to look and how do we look to serve and pray for our city as well. And so in that, we're just glad that we can, as we try to process this year, be there for one another. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been in a series called Good Thoughts. And we've been talking about discernment. Healthy thinking and what it means to process life from your identity in Jesus, from Him as your single point of reference. And we started off talking about what is true, that living in accordance with fact is not optional, that Jesus followers should be champions of truth. And then last week we talked about whatever is noble, that we should live and think in awe-inspiring ways, so that we would live in such a way that we would look up to God and that how we act would help people look up to God. And that was a very timely topic for last week as we think about everything that's happened in our country the last 2 weeks since the taking of George Floyd, which is why today's topic is also so important and incredibly timely, because the next part of Philippians 4:8 is that we would think about whatever is just. Whatever is just. One scholar explains the concept of just like this. Humans are to reflect the character of God in their response to the divine mandate that attends the purpose of human existence, granting God's unique creatures their due regard and proper treatment. And that last phrase is what's of most important. That we would grant God's unique creatures their due regard and proper treatment. Translating this a little bit, what is he saying is that people who follow Jesus are to represent and show the world Jesus. When it comes to issues that are social, political, relational, or anything else which occurs in society, Christians think about these things in light of Jesus' character. Christians bring the reality of God's character into society. And Christians are to help guide society back to the reality of God and his character, which means Christians should, of all people, of everyone in the world, should be people that show others their due regard and proper treatment. Think about what Scripture says. In 2 Corinthians 5, it says, "Therefore we are ambassadors for Christ, God making his appeal through us. We implore you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God." Matthew 5:16 says, "Let your light shine before others so they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." And Micah 6:8, "He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." To be people who are just, to treat others justly, to want our society to be a just society, is at the core reality of what it means to follow God. And so what does this mean for us? What does it mean for us to be just people? How do we respond to the injustices that we see going on in the world around us? If anything has been said time and time again over the last 2 weeks, is that people need to speak less and listen more. One of the reasons why some may not grasp the severity of what is happening in the country is we are not looking at it from the perspective of those whom it impacts the most. People share their experiences, and rather than understanding that and trying to be empathetic to that, we just start talking. And so in that, I'm very excited to have some friends join me this morning for the rest of the message. The rest of today is going to be very different than normal, in that I want to share with you a conversation that I recently had with two good friends of mine, Ernest Gray and Eric Redmond. I wanted to hear to hear us talking about this entire situation and how it's impacted them, and to hear their thoughts about race and justice and the church. And so this is the rest of the message for today. And I just want to beg you, ask you, beseech you, whatever word works for you the most, that you would listen. Not just that audible sounds would go in your ears, but that you would try to understand what they're saying from their perspective, how they're speaking into this situation, and to grasp the reality of what they want to communicate to us. And so I'm going to pray, and we're going to listen to what they have to say. And so God, we come before you with open hearts, with open ears. God, I pray that you would help us to be attentive to what you're saying through these brothers in Christ. I pray that you would help us to be open to what you want to say to us in this moment. I pray that you would give us eyes to see what's happening in the world around us from your perspective and not ours. And we ask all these things in your name. Amen. Well, hello again, New Life Lincoln Park. I'm really excited to be able to introduce to you some of my friends, Ernest Gray and Eric Redmond. And I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. We'll go with the elder statesman. So Eric, why don't you go ahead and start us off and tell us who you are.
Bobby, it's good to be with you today. So I am one of Bobby's colleagues at Moody Bible Institute. I teach in the Bible department. I also serve on staff at Calvary Memorial Church in Oak Park as an associate pastor. And previously, I have served as a senior pastor, and I've been in the classroom for almost 30 years teaching. My wife, Pamela, and I live in Brookfield, and we have 5 adult children.
Yes, and Eric and Pam, was the first time that Jeanette and I got to go to Greece with Study Abroad. There's the shirt. We got to go with Eric and Pam, and it was just an awesome time getting to know them and walking around the heat of Greece together. And really glad that you get to kind of just speak into our church family here this morning. Get to share you with them.
Yeah, it's good to be here, Bobby.
And Ernest.
So I'm Ernest Gray, and I have not gone to Greece with you, Bobby, yet, but we oftentimes share our exploits and our joy for visiting Jerusalem. And so I just want to thank you for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. I've been at Moody for the past decade. And prior to that, you and I have shared our educational journeys together, being students at Moody together, and then over at Wheaton together, we did similar programs. So I've taught in the Bible department at Moody for the past decade, for the last 12 years, teach writing alongside of Eric. And I've just enjoyed, getting the chance to shape students. And accompanying that, I've also been pastoring a Baptist church on the west side of Chicago and a small congregation called Keystone Baptist in West Garfield Park. And I've enjoyed that immensely, as it has been a church that has been strategic, a church too important to fail in West Garfield Park. So I'm delighted that we have a great, long, rich relationship in history. So it's a joy to be with you, Bobby, and with your people.
Yeah, Ernest and I were classmates at Wheaton. I went to go and try to find some pictures of graduation and back in that day, but then I'm like, no one needs to see that. We're working through enough right now. No one wants to see those old pictures of us.
Definitely old pictures, bro. I can't believe how much time has passed.
Yeah, well, I'm so grateful, like I said, to be able to share the two of you with our church family, and just appreciate both of your friendships. And this has been a very rough 2 weeks, and I know that that's something I don't need to say to the two of you or any sense of it. And so I think that would be a great place to start is as you're comfortable sharing, can you just articulate what your experience from this last week has been? What have you personally just been feeling, your thoughts, your emotions, good, bad, and the ugly? How would you describe it?
So, Bobby, I have, probably like you and Ernest, been on emails and texts nonstop.
Yeah.
But something happened this weekend where I had a huge ball of emotions, the way I would describe it, all hit me at one time as I continued to look at the video of what happened with George Floyd. I started to have anger mixed with grief, mixed with frustration, mixed with fear, because I'd already thought from Ahmaud Arbery's episode in death, wow, that easily could have been me out on a walk, out on a run. But then I realized that easily could have been me with a knee on my neck. And so I wrote to somebody, it's like trying to unravel this yarn ball or this ball of rubber bands to try to figure out what's going on with my emotions right now. And it's like every time I peel a band or a piece of yarn, there's a straight pin sticking out at me. But I've got to unravel this, but it's one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do.
I think the complexity of the imagery of that ball of rubber bands is fitting. I mean, I think it's everything put together for me. Everything just seems to be compounded. When Ahmaud Arbery was violently killed 2 months ago, that Friday I went for a run in his honor. It was his birthday, and I decided that there's a lot of that instance to me just spoke to the sickness of our nation. And I was just struck by the fact that, we've got unaddressed the symptoms of the underlying issue of racism, the sin of it, the death of it has been unaddressed for so long. And it was the kindling that finally erupted into into this moment. I hate to be, to use a secular idea, but it's fitting to think about the Dark Knight and the Joker. The Joker said, "Look, man, uh, all societies need to descend into total anarchy is just a little push." And George Floyd was that little push to take all of the last 3 months of COVID, of economic downturn, job loss, and the like, and give it a push. Prior to all of this, we all were facing various challenges. I have my own challenges. I'm transitioning, and so I'm thinking about that. I was rather stuck, not knowing what to do, and not knowing necessarily where to turn. I turned to scripture, spend time in prayer, but again, I think that this has been a very unique time for me,
Hmm.
unlike any other.
Well, you're both married, you have families, you're both part of church communities. How is this impacting your families? Let's start there. How has this been impacting your families?
Well, as I just mentioned, Pam and I have 5 adult children, including 2 who are adopted. Our sons are adopted. We don't hide that, but they're just our children. But we have a 19-year-old and a 21-year-old. They're both over 6 feet tall. And of course, our thoughts immediately went to one of our boys being out on a run, or one of our boys being out where he is suspected of doing something wrong and has a confrontation with the law. We've written to so many friends to say, please pray for our youngest son that he won't get out there with the rioters. It's not that we don't want him to be part of the protest for justice, but we don't want him out where the rioters are doing something unwise and then find himself facing the law and possibly be harmed to the point of a lethal situation. This is a real concern for us. George Floyd's mother and Ahmaud's mother did not wake up on each of those days thinking, this is the last day I'm going to see my son. We don't know when that's going to hit. Surely death is coming to all of us, but we don't want it with the injustice association there. And so we've had to really think through, ask lots of people to pray and reassure ourselves that the Lord is the one who has to watch over our children.
Yeah. Thankfully, we have each other, right? I do think about the reality that my oldest boy in a couple of years will be an African-American male navigating Chicago. And that does give me pause and fear and the like. And I myself, I live on the south side of Chicago in Beverly, and a block away, there's carnage, there's destruction from the recent riots. I can see this in real time right around in my neighborhood. And I think about that because it's where we live, and you want your home to be a place of respite. But right now, the uncertainty of it all makes us all want to just stay locked on lockdown and not venture out too much. So it's created the dynamics have been good to be together, but it's also created its own tension as well for our family. We're thankful that we have each other.
Well, when you think of this last week, like I said, there's so many emotions around this. What is these last 2 weeks? What is something that has, just kind of being raw and honest about this, what is something that's made you angry, something that's made you fearful, and something that's given you hope?
I'm going to yield the floor to the younger person here to go first this time, and then I'll come back.
When I think about what makes me angry, it's as though I'm angry about the storyline. The storyline keeps playing out. That we've seen this film before. I remember, Bobby, you telling me and sharing with me your excitement around reading the book, The Hate U Give. We were in our teacher's lounge and we were talking about it together, maybe 2 summers ago, bro.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good book.
So it was an extraordinary. I didn't even read the book. I saw the movie, so that shows you. But the book is better. The book is always better. And so I just thought about that because it captures the same storyline, the same plot, the same dilemma. And I'm angry that this keeps playing out again and again. It's as if the warnings have not been heeded. It's as if the underlying issues, it is not the sneeze, it's the virus internally that is creating the sneeze. It is the It is the unaddressed issues of racism, America's original sin, that keep getting kicking the can down the road. And so I'm angry that that has been the reality, but also at the same time hopeful in that sense, anger slash happy that in essence this can be hopefully in this moment utilized in order to have those real raw conversations. Yes, a deluge of text, emails, and how you doings have come my way, and I'm thankful to be used in this moment, but I'm also sad because the spaces that we occupy. If I'm honest, man, these are not welcome conversations, and we've had experiences where being the only advocates in the room and saying no, let's not shut down the conversation. Let's keep going because there's traction here. That's what it's a resurfacing plot line. It's a narrative. I've read this book before,
Yeah.
and that book just keeps coming out with a new edition and new characters. The characters themselves
Mm.
being the men and women who lose their lives, and I'm angry about that, brother. That's my thoughts.
Mm. Yeah, I resonate with all of that also. We hate to see this as up, wash, rinse, dry, repeat. Here we are
Okay.
again.
Yeah.
And I just we tire of it. And there's a sense in which, having lived through the Rodney King riots, we thought, okay, this is going to be the issue where we're really going to address brutality, in racial injustice, institutionalized racism that goes on. And then we come through another Trayvon Martin, and we come through Sandra Bland again, and we come through Freddie Gray and Eric Gardner and all the names in there that should not be forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
And then here we are again, and part of the anger comes from what will it take for us to have a sustained effort to finally erase that long shadow left by the beginnings of our country and our failure to deal with things back during slavery and during Jim Crow and during the civil rights period. But something else that has angered me, which probably angered both of you and many others, are the attempt of some to divert the issue by looking at other things that are in play, but it's not the right time to address those, like the injustice that is promoted by the rioters and the looters. Yes, that is an issue. And we need to bring justice there.
Yeah.
But that's not the major conversation right now, and we don't need to have that one right now. The first concern, the first thing that should take place that should drive our response, I think, should be immediate empathy and not, it's time for me to sit back and see if there are other wrong things here. That thing angers, and it was angering many of the people protesting and probably fueling some of the rioting here. Not to justify the rioting, but that makes me angry.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of fear, I have to go to an experience that just happened in the last two days. So many of the listeners here today in the Chicago area have probably seen on the news the episode in which there's a family, 3 women, who are going to a mall locally, and they're in the wrong place, wrong time. The mall is closed, and so when they arrive, police think they are there to loot. And so they surround the car, smash the windows, drag the ladies out of the car to handcuff them, grab one of them by their hair. And now the 3 ladies are suing or filing suit against the police department, but their lives have been changed forever.
Yeah.
Just 3 days ago, Pam and I needed to go get something from Home Depot and get some dog food from PetSmart. They're right next to each other in Broadview Village Mall, only 1.6 miles from us. We did not know that Broadview Village Mall had shut down for 1 day because of the rioting in North Riverside. So we drove up to the mall and all the stores were closed, and we drove and looked around like, oh my goodness. I actually walked up to PetSmart, to the door to see, like, what is going on here? When we saw that news story, fear ran through us, and we thought, oh my goodness,
Could have been you.
that could have been us.
That could have been you.
By an innocent mistake made, and our ethnicity would have played into the response. It might have been assumed they're only here to loot. That really scared us, that we could
Mm.
have been victimized and our lives could have been changed forever by an innocent mistake.
He mentioned his fear. I forgot the fear part. My fear is that nothing will come of it. We'll get back to business as normal. Normal. That normal will return.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that the rinse, wash, repeat, dry it out and let it hang out to dry kind of cycle will continue on. That's my biggest fear. That I've been saying a thought of like, don't let a good catastrophe go to waste. I pray that this is not wasted,
Yeah.
so that we can see some real systemic changes across a very broad base, a very broad spectrum of
Yes.
society. That's what I'm fearful of, that it will not come about, or that there won't be accountability given, so that the justice system, that the unequal justice system will begin to work for all the citizenry of the United States, and not just one system here and another system here. And that, as if you've most likely heard, that an arrest is not the ceiling. Oh, you should be happy, but it's just the bottom. That's just the basic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
That was one thing I said to the church last week, was that a white person can see what happened 2 weeks ago and see George Floyd, but a black person sees what happened 2 weeks ago and sees every name of every person
Yes.
Yeah.
that this has happened to. And that's
Yeah.
why there's an emotional disconnect. There's a book called White Fragility. It's one that's been recommended a lot lately, and I've actually started reading it myself. What I've read has been really good. But an article that I also read recently about the book said that the book said about the book of how it's a book written from the perspective of a white woman about whites, which is great. But the critique comes that it lacks scholarship and insight from the black perspective. The author who wrote this critique said that the author, she quoted a book, a novel from 1912 by an author named James Weldon Johnson. And the character in his book says that the colored people of this country know and understand the white people better than the white people know and understand themselves. And so that was the thing that the author was saying about white fragility, was that it's great, but it's missing that perspective, that the black community knows things about the white community that the white community doesn't even realize about themselves. And I thought that was fascinating and very powerful. And so considering that, what does the white church not realize, not only about the last 2 weeks, but about themselves in light of the last 2 weeks?
The elder grabbed that one.
Well, Bobby, you already dipped your toe in these waters, in that it's important to remember that Ernest and I and people like us, and those who might be whites but are very closely connected in their family members to somebody else that's African American, or slightly differently, this is something we think about and live constantly. It can't go away. I didn't just start thinking about my son possibly having a run-in, or me having a run-in with somebody. I think about a run-in when I'm just driving. George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery have only heightened what has gone on and made me say I need to drive even slower. I need to be more deliberate in stopping at a stop sign and making sure my signal is on and I pause before I make my right-hand turns. They've only made me much more aware, but I'm already thinking when I'm out driving, Lord, please today, I don't want an incident with any officer while I'm driving. I don't want to be mistaken for anybody or seem suspicious. Please, Lord, today, would you watch over my sons? Don't let them be with the wrong group and be wrongly handled by police or other authority. And we just live in this. And again, I don't live in it as much as some others live in it daily, simply because I have distance from Brookfield. Pam and I were talking with an older friend who lives on the south side, and she was just checking on us about a week ago to see how we were doing. And she said, how you're doing with having groceries and the goods you need in your house. Are you okay when you're going out to the store? And Pam and I said, go out to the store We're not doing that. It's too high risk. We're just using Instacart for everything. They're dropping it on our porch, and we're going out with gloves and masks, picking it up, washing everything when we get in the house, etc. And she paused, and then she scoffed and said, Instacart, huh? She said, Instacart doesn't work over here where I live. I have to go to the store and risk getting COVID. And I just, wow. I mean, it's something we're not even thinking about over here, because Instacart gets here within 2 hours of me making an order. I don't have to go anywhere. So I say that also to say, and in her community, she may even more acutely be experiencing the concern that Pam and I also have daily, that is just absent from the feelings and experience of many of our brothers and sisters of the majority hue in America. And that takes stress away. You don't have the same sorts of stresses. Even the way you're praying is differently. What we're expecting when we come to church on a Sunday to hear, is my pastor going to say anything about this to let me know he's concerned about things that affect me, that although they might not be affecting someone else, on and on and on and all. So just be aware that this is something that we're living, breathing, sleeping, eating,
And these
every day because of the
insecurities,
history of our country. Yeah.
they predate COVID. These insecurities,
Yeah.
food insecurities, inability to go out, the COVID hitting our population with a far greater hammer than the majority population. 100 people die of COVID, 80% are of color. You speak
No,
to
you're right.
the plight of inner city, and it's even more acute on the west side and West Garfield. It's even more. And we have a food pantry at our church, and we've had to shutter that. Why? Not because we don't care about the community. The pantry had to shut down because the workers in my church are 60 and up and with comorbidity. And we have felt that and wanted to be a part, but we know we can't be a part because those at work are high risk. So
they're all high risk.
we have had to figure that out, and we have had to make some hard choices. You know, what I want the church to know, and how this author rightly critiques that African Americans know white people better than they know themselves. It is the reality that the idea of whiteness, it is a non-loaded term, a term that doesn't necessarily need to shut conversations down, is a second skin, to quote Willie Jennings. It is the reality that we all live in. It is the status quo. And it isn't about pigmentation. This is not about a person's skin color. It's an aesthetic that says that this is right and that is not so right. It says that this is reality, and your reality, it doesn't matter as much. And it's an incredibly exhausting amount of energy we have to put in order to perform at a certain thing. So what is it that white people don't know that they need to know? Is that people of color around the world, and in many places where the dominant culture dictates, is that it's exhausting to try to live into the expectations. You know, you hear the mantra, well, why didn't they just comply? Everything would just be fine if they got pulled over. You just comply. It's because there's a history of maltreatment every time the lights come on and the blood pressure rises. You would want to comply. If you've been historically all the time subjected to violence and danger and trauma, then you're going to begin to change the way in which you respond. And so it's not about compliance, but that's a vestige of whiteness, is this sense of, I have a second skin that I'm living into, that I have to wear every day, and it wreaks havoc upon my own existence and being in many ways. Go ahead.
And let me add to that, Ernest. I had a friend, African American, who's a pastor back east where I'm from, and he just put a simple statement on Instagram and said, if any of you mothers, or asked if any of you mothers came upon your son laying on the ground with someone's knee on his neck, and your son was screaming or saying, I can't breathe, how would you react to that? you would go ballistic. Now, let's see, you've seen not one of your sons, but many of your sons and daughters have the knee on their neck, metaphorically. And you keep experiencing this no matter how many times you are crying out. What do you expect to happen in society? And how do you think that mom feels having that neck with a knee on it again and again with her children again and again? Just understand that's a weight that we are carrying because of what has happened in the country.
And that weight is, and we're expanding this not just to policing, rightly so, which is a problem, but this reaches into, that's one slice of the pie. You've got other pieces of that pie that there's a knee upon them, that the oxygen is being cut off from, that limited access. Let's use the term and expand it about limited access. What is the metaphor? I'm thinking about this from a perspective of like the choking and asphyxiation is a choking in our society. This choking sense of like, I can't get ahead. I can't move out of a neighborhood that is plagued by violence because of not because Black people are inherently more sinful than the next person. No, we don't have a stake on sin. It's not our thing. Everybody is extraordinarily sinful. It's that we're imploding because we don't have access outside of these confines.
Yes.
And that's asphyxiating. It is choking. Policing is a problem. Yep.
But there's so much
Redoing the
more.
system, but it is one slice of a pie. And this moment is this is the protest. These are the marches. Protesting is fine. You find in scripture, everybody protested in order to bring about change. To speak truth to empire, Paul went up against empire, stood before Felix and told him, I don't want to claim my rights, but I must preach the gospel. I have to do it or I can't do anything else. And so I think that's what we have to do, is we have to raise our voice and we have to champion it.
Well, when you think about how I defined justice for everyone, reading that quote that we would show all people due regard and proper treatment, and just that idea of justice. What does the white church not understand about that?
I think about it in terms of how we can leverage our bodies. If bodies are being subjected to harm and violence, if your arm is in need because you slammed it in the car door, you don't say, well, get over it, arm.
Yeah.
I got good feet. I got another one that's good over here too.
Right.
You just need to get over it. Get over yourself. Get over yourself. I think about it in terms of how certain conversation killers, one of them I mentioned earlier is the idea of whiteness or white privilege can be, I'm not using it weaponized. Please, it's not a weaponized term. It is a social fact. And studies have kind of abstracted that out. But the reality is the conversation can continue on. And for believers, it needs to be illustrative by Jesus' own ministry. You've heard the parabolic material being used as a way to describe what's going on. You've got the sheep and the shepherd. You've got the one sheep that strays, and you've got the 99 that stay. It's as if by Jesus focusing upon the one, the 99 cry out, well, our lives matter too. Don't you care about us as sheep? Of course. But you're not the one in harm's way right now. You're not the one in grave danger.
Yes.
You're not the one who's in grave danger right now. And so, in essence, that's the best illustration that I've heard in a long time to say that Jesus goes after that one because that one, which is part of which is part of all the lives of the sheep, is in grave danger, and he needs to focus his attention there. And I think that that's what the white church needs to know. We're not saying you don't matter, but it is that there is a problem in the body, and one part of the body needs a tourniquet.
Yes.
One question I was going to ask is what passage you would point to for the white church during this time. And you mentioned, Ernest, the one lost sheep, and I've heard that this week as well. I think it's so powerful. Are there any other passages that come to mind that you would direct us to think about and just meditate on? Either one of you?
I'll share one real quick. I got my Bible open. It's James 3:17. Wisdom that comes from above is first peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy, good fruit, impartial and sincere, peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. So James 3:17-18. I've been thinking on that a little bit.
Mm.
Yeah.
Why does that come to mind? Like, why is that important for the white church to hear?
Well, I think that because we're fractured, because we don't know what to do, solidarity is everything. And to be a peacemaker is to, in my thinking, inaugurate a bit of shalom, the peace of God, God's peace, into a moment. This is the church can really begin to hopefully infiltrate these spaces to help us think a little bit more cogently about how we can partner and love and care for one another. And I think that Jesus' own ministry, when he talks about peace, I leave with you, and at the end of John 16, not as the world gives, but my peace. I think that that's something we need to be mindful of and trying to pursue.
Bobby, I would like to share two places that have come to my mind through the current racial pandemic being on display again. One comes from 1 John 3, verse 17. In the ESV, it says, "But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him?" Now, here's where we need to do some self-examination and reality checks concerning the distribution of goods and wealth and economic disparities inside the country, from which white evangelical middle class and upper middle class churches benefit, and unfortunately other churches do not gain benefit from that. And this would be a long discussion, but if we look at how wealth moves with communities and people who live in those communities, and how people with wealth tend to congregate around one another, and with the history of the country, even with a dividing line like 290, how those with wealth get separated from many who do not have wealth. And we watch how that affects something like access to health care now, or even having insurance so that you can go access the health care, or what that means for seeing justice come to certain communities, or people having the ability to go to better schools and have better access to jobs so that they won't have to stay in an economic depression or even be perceived as those who are not meaningfully contributing to society. Those with the world's goods, seeing those in need as believers, cannot close their hearts now.
Yeah.
And they have to say, okay, what does it mean for me now to have practical open-heartedness and orthopraxy toward those in that situation? When I'm a person of means and goods, it doesn't mean everyone has the same level of means and goods, and everybody has the same level of leisurely income or discretionary income or the amount of wealth massed here. But it does mean we need to think about that and how we could be involved and have contribution without paternalism, without our control. So that I've just been thinking about that a little more. But the other place that has struck me in the last few days goes back to the whole conversation about whether or not the gospel is associated with social justice, or social justice has anything to do with the gospel. And I could go into a lot of angry feelings over those discussions. But I've been teaching, I taught through the Gospel of Mark last semester, one of my New Testament elective courses. And all four gospels have a similarity in a certain part of the structure, beginning with the announcement of the forerunner coming, John the Baptist.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he's the herald who is trying to get people to be prepared to meet the Lord before the Lord comes and starts crushing the mountains and straightening out the valleys and the crooked places. If you're going to be prepared to meet the Lord, so John is preaching the gospel message here,
He definitely is.
and he calls people to repentance. Here's what the gospel message looks like to tax collectors and soldiers.
Hmm.
Don't extort. Don't take more than you have to. That is a message of economic justice attached to the repentance of the gospel. And so the gospel certainly has to do with a social economic issue in the lives of many who are living in Roman culture. And here we are saying the gospel has nothing to do with
Do with that.
social justice. And that's the first message of the forerunner if you're
Everything to
going to
do with
meet
it.
God and
We
be
can't
prepared
sort
to meet
lentils
him.
on that. We cannot.
Yeah.
We can't be sorting in lentils. We can't be picking apart, choosing which ones we agree with and others that we got to take the whole thing.
Yes.
To which you're absolutely right. I learned something. Thank you, brother. Preach.
And so, to kind of wrap this up, what is one thing that you would each want to say to your white brothers and sisters in Christ during this time?
In my office on Sweeting, for a couple of years, I kept a poem on my board outside my office, and I'm struck by it every time I read it. So I'm going to read it for you now. It's a poem by a guy by the name of Bernardo Overstreet. And the title of the poem is called "Stubborn Ounces." Here's how it goes. You say the little efforts that I make will do no good. They never will prevail to tip the hovering scale where justice hangs in the balance. I don't think I ever thought they would, but I am prejudiced beyond debate in favor of my right to choose which side shall feel the stubborn ounces of my weight. And I'm struck by that. We all choose where we're going to place our bodies, our stubborn ounces upon an issue. And I think that this stubborn ounces poem captures this. Say, I want to tip the scale and lean more into justice than anywhere else, and I want to place myself in harm's way to do so. I think it's worth it, and this is what the dilemma of the marchers, the protesters today, they're having to wrestle. Do I go out and I spend time on the front lines knowing that COVID is marching with me? And for some people, they say it's worth the risk. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put my stubborn ounces on the line, and I'm gonna walk.
Yeah.
And it's that deep where life hangs in the balance for some of these, but justice to them matters more. So they'll place their ounces in that debate.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, Bobby, to members of a predominantly white church, in which I'm a member right now, and I've said this to many people, allow African Americans right now to have space, to have righteous anger, even if it might be expressed in a slightly unsanctified way right now.
Hey.
So I have to tell you something that happened when Pam and I were watching the news last weekend. And as it was going over the initial protest, and then the riot started, and then we watched police responding to the rioters. You know, police tend to respond in proportion to the rioters. Statistically, that has been shown. And we're watching African Americans in particular now coming under the weight of billy clubs and other things. I sat up straight on my bed and shouted, and at the same time, Pam just kind of mouthed it out of her mouth. Brace yourself for this. And we just said, I hate white people. Now, as Bobby, you know, and as so many of my friends know, I mean, I couldn't even be on staff at my church or teach at Moody if that were true, or have so many that have lived with me. We have had a young lady who's like a daughter to us live with us for 10 months. She's white, and she's like family to us. And we had two others who were tenants and like children to us live in our house for 2 years here. So it's not that, but that's how it came out, because we're looking at the expression of philosophical whiteness and its aftermath. And in an unrighteous way, we said those sort of things. But what I say is, it will come out in other ways. It'll come out in some, I'm not really talking to you today at church here. And it's not because you wielded the Billy Club. It's just, you remind me of the issue here. And you're going to have to give me space to be a little sour, to not be up here, not to want to answer all your questions on this, and maybe be a little cold toward the 10th person that well-meaningly says, hey, I'm sorry for what's going on. I know you're well-meaning right now, but right now emotionally, and I'm just not at the place right now, and you need to allow for that. I'll hit the reset button. The Holy Spirit will take over my grief, my anger, my frustration, my fear, and I'll come back. But allow for that and pray for me. Don't say, well, look, they're just as bad as just.
There's a little trauma going around. Please,
that's right. Trauma is a great way to think about that. So that's what I would say.
And one thing that came to mind too when you said that, Eric, and I don't think that you hate me, is I could think of friends, family members, church members, people back home, anyone that's white that's watching this who would hear you say that and would immediately get defensive. It would create an emotional reaction in them. See, this is what they think of us. And I would turn that back around on them though, and go, take the emotional reaction you just had.
Yeah. Wow.
And multiply that by 1,000,000, and you understand what they're going through. It's that moment to be able to enter into empathy in a way that we don't realize, to not be offended, but to go, oh, I mean, I get it.
So let me enter here, Bobby. I'm going to reveal something about my past that Ernest doesn't know about me also. So I've worked all sorts of jobs, ministries, volunteer stuff. And something
I thought you were going to confess your addiction to Mountain Dew. I mean, you don't have to do that right now.
I have been clean for 93 days. Thank you very much.
Lord have mercy.
That's impressive with everything going on, too.
Look at you. Look at you.
Yeah. Only because
the jitters are gone. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. My wife banned me from it. But
Instacart doesn't deliver Mountain Dew. That's the only reason why.
Oh, I wish that was so.
Man.
Over 20 years ago, I was a volunteer counselor for a rape crisis center, and I won't tell where. I was a counselor for male rape victims. Because, of course, as a man, you can't counsel female rape victims. And I was a volunteer there for about a year. But when we're all going through the training, one of the things everybody knows is this. Men cannot counsel women rape victims because we look like the one who was the perpetrator. Now, at a time a woman is being helped after becoming a survivor of that, she might say, I hate men. Does she really hate all men? Or is she dealing with the trauma that is within toward the one man who harmed her? But all men become the issue of the power structure and the lack of addressing rape kits that are sitting in police stations and everything else in there. She probably doesn't hate every man. If she has a son, she doesn't hate her own son. But we allow and understand why she would say that because of what the representation the one does for the whole group, and now how the group is portrayed in the one. And something similar happens when my wife and I jump up and both say in that moment, I hate white people, but it's really angst directed against the knee on the neck or the three who shot Ahmaud. Or
let me follow up that last question with this. What would you say? What is one thing you'd want to say to other people of color who are brothers and sisters of Christ during this time?
I think about the reality from a theological perspective is this. There may be disparaging comments and thoughts that I've encountered throughout the years about Black theologians and liberation theologians in the past who have articulated an anthropology that connects us to the plight of Israel, the suffering, the slavery. We resonate with that story far better,
Mm-hmm.
more personal, due to the experiences that we have.
Mm-hmm.
In essence, it feels as though the story that Moses wrote was our own story. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a sense that we have
I'm sorry,
a
I'm tuning you
very,
up now, Doc. You're
we
going
got a
there.
serious, we have a very serious, close, uh, lockstep relationship with Israel as we read the scriptures. And we understand,
Mm-hmm.
as ex-slaves would have when they were fleeing north and doing prayer meetings up in Maine, saying, "My Jesus is the King of Kings. No man can work like him.
Yeah.
Don't be weary in well doing.
Mm-hmm.
Know that God, who gave you and I the autonomy and the ability to see our intrinsic worth and value as he did Israel, because he's with us, he'll be with
Stony
us
the
again."
road we trod. I can't say it better than what Ernest has said. I would say, be steadfast. The Lord will prevail.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to thank the both of you so much for just being honest, for speaking into our church, for loving the body in this way. And I just pray that your words are an encouragement. I pray it helps our people think more and to grow in empathy. And I just want to say thank you both so much for speaking into our community.
Bobby, we've partnered for so long in so many ways, and I appreciate you and I appreciate your people. The fact that pastor and people in Lincoln Park can continue to epitomize the gospel, to represent Jesus, on the north side there, to have a gospel presence. And I thank you for allowing me to share with you thoughts that have developed over these 40 years of my life. So I appreciate that, and I thank your people for listening to what we had to share. I may not have always come across in the best way, but it's been a joy to share these thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And Bobby, thank you also for shepherding your people in love for God and love for neighbor, and leading your congregation in this way by your example and by opportunities like this. You are not an opportunist. We know this is coming from the sincerity of your heart, and we've seen that in every way. And I appreciated our friendship the last 5 years so much in this invitation here. And I'm going to forgive you for the comment about the Mountain Dew, and I'm going to forgive you for inviting Ernest, who referenced a DC movie in here rather than a Marvel movie.
Oh man,
it's okay, because we went
it's
to
on and
Greece,
popping.
and he picked a good DC movie. It's okay. I forgive you for that. But no, thank you so much.
Grace and forgiveness all around.
Well, there was no reference to Star Wars, which your people should be shocked anyway. So that's a whole nother story.
No, they get
Matrix
enough
Reloaded.
of that from me. So
Yeah. Bless you all. Thanks, Bobby.
thank you guys so
Thank you, Bobby.
much. I pray that you were able to listen. And I know that there's a lot in there. And so maybe you need to go back and rewatch it later today or later this week. Maybe you know somebody that needs to hear it. But if we're truly going to love our neighbors, we need to understand what our neighbors are going through. And what does it look like to love our neighbors? Augustine said this: what does love look like? It has the hands to help others. It has the feet to hasten to the poor and needy. It has eyes to see misery and want. It has the ears to hear the sighs and sorrow of men. That is what love looks like. And so to truly love someone is for them to see that. And so I pray that this helps you to think, to process, to think about what it means for you to love your neighbors. And so I'm going to turn it over to Hannah. We're going to be closing in a final song in a unique way, just as we bring what God is speaking to our hearts to a focused manner.
We're going to close with this song that Ed and I heard a few years ago, and it really struck us. And I knew that at some point I wanted to share this song, and now was the most appropriate for sure. is written from the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount, and I hope that this song is encouraging to those of you who are hurting. And I hope that this helps us think of those in the body that are hurting, who have felt like the least of these. And I want you to join in and sing this song, but I also want you to hear this song and let these lyrics really just touch your heart today. So let's sing together. Blessed are the ones who do not bury all the broken pieces of their heart. Blessed are the tears of all the weary, pouring like a sky of falling stars. Blessed are the wounded ones in mourning, brave enough to show the Lord their scars. Blessed are the hurts that are not hidden, open to the healing touch of God, and the kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more, this is not the end. Hope is in the Lord, keep your eyes on Him. Blessed are the ones who walk in kindness, even in the face of great abuse. Blessed are the deeds that go unnoticed, serving with unguarded gratitude. And blessed are the ones who fight for justice, longing for the coming day of peace. And blessed is the soul that thirsts for righteousness, welcoming the lost, the last, the least. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more, this is not the end. Hope is in the Lord, keep your eyes on Him. We look to you. Blessed are the ones who suffer violence and still have strength to love their enemies. Blessed is the faith of those who persevere. Though they fall, they'll never know defeat. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours.
extend just thank you again to Ernest and Eric for joining us this morning and just sharing so openly, especially during this time. I want to challenge you to not just have heard this, but to respond to this. And one of the ways you can respond to this, join us tonight. Join us tonight for prayer day as we really think through this as a church family. Go to the Facebook page, find the events, make sure you reserve a spot or text this number and we'll get that information to you. I mean, people are responding in different ways, but do something. Let your stubborn ounces be on the right side. So God, we just thank you so much for the fact that you entrust us to be your ambassadors. You entrust us to be your representatives. God, I pray that you would give us strength. I pray that you would help us when we grow weary. I pray that you would help us to protect our hearts and our minds. God, I pray that you would remind us of who we are in you. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Thanks, everyone. See you next Sunday.